Hey guys, how's it going? So we're back with another monthly market update. A little late on this one, I've just been super busy, but I am home now and we can get basically straight into it. I've got a few things that I wanted to go over. I want to talk about Rivian, I want to talk about Bitcoin, are we near a bottom? I want to talk about, is the bull market over? Because obviously we're heading into the period of time where the 4-year cycle would be ending, and so people are obviously concerned about the cycle, and I'm here to tell you about what I think on that topic. So first of all, with Rivian, we basically had price drop temporarily into the buy zone, and I had a lot of those bids that I set there filled. Pretty much all my bids were filled, and my full position is now in for Rivian, and it's now obviously gone up quite a bit. So anyone who has been looking to buy this stock, you should be basically fully allocated because it entered the buy zone where we had our orders set. So we're basically, the thesis for this one is still intact as it's always been. We're just going to be holding this one until basically, the thesis is playing out and we can reassess at a later point. But one of the main catalysts that we're looking out for is the launch of the new car, which is called the R2, and that's going to be coming out probably next year. Now, if price was to break down and, go below our entry, then we would obviously reassess things, but it's looking unlikely, and I'm expecting Rivian to go and perform quite well. So that's just a brief one. Now let's get into the main point, which is Bitcoin. So honestly, Bitcoin looks pretty good. I think we're pretty much near a bottom. I think we go to new all-time highs early next year, and I think everything looks pretty good. I'm really just not understanding the whole concern that people are having. I could be wrong. There's definitely still a chance that we go into a bear market, but I just think it's a low probability scenario. If you look at the bids, this wall that we see here is the same sort of wall that we saw at the last bottoms. It looks really good. So I would say the bottom's within a 5-10% range. Obviously we could go a little lower just to push into these bids, but this is showing you that there is demand. And yesterday there was a lot of asks above the price, but that's gone now. So I think that was just a spoof. So yeah, things look really good. And there's also a number of other things that are a number of other sort of pieces of confluence that are adding to the bull case. So first thing was the bids. Second thing is obviously sentiment is really negative. On Twitter, people are just really concerned. And also if you look at the conversations happening in the mastermind, people are annoyed. People are angry. They've lost money. The market's shit. People are acting like what you would expect to see at or near a bottom. Okay. And obviously people are talking a lot about the 4-year cycle. We're also sitting at the golden pocket. So just above the golden pocket, this is a region where price has typically bottomed in prior bull markets for Bitcoin. We hit this 0.5 to 0.618 fib level, and price tends to bottom there. So, we've hit it now. Also, there's this, trend line that when we hit, it tends to bottom there. I mean, you could maybe draw it there, but anyway, I draw it from here. I don't really use trend lines much, but that's just to add to the confluence. Funding's fully reset, so you can see here that funding is pretty good across the board. It's all green. And we also had that massive liquidation event, which is the largest in crypto's history from a dollar standpoint, and historically Bitcoin trends up when that happens. Doesn't happen every time, but typically you have a massive liquidation event that's near or at the bottom for Bitcoin. We go up. QE is likely to start soon. They've already spoken about this. There's a tweet here by Alex Kruger where Fed Logan discussed the possibility of restarting asset purchases. This is the first time in years that a FOMC member has raised this prospect. It's not QE like it was in the past, but it is my way that I understood what they want to do is they basically want to help support the economy to the extent that the economy is growing. So if the economy is growing 2%, you would then do this sort of QE-like thing to a similar extent. So it's just growing with the economy, essentially. That's the takeaway that I had when I had a quick look at this. I'm obviously not an expert on this macro stuff, but it's still, QE to what the market is going to price it in as. We also have the government shutdown. That's a headwind that's holding price down at the moment, but eventually the government will reopen within maybe a few weeks. That's definitely, if the government was to stay shut down, that is a potential further downside catalyst, but I would expect that downside to be limited. It would be more like a cascade liquidation, crash, V reversal than, a bear market, because there will come a point where things get bad enough with that government shutdown scenario where they just really rush in and get the government back open. We're already seeing that there's been some delays and cancellations in a lot of flights in America because a lot of the airline staff are government funded. I think the ones that are in the towers that communicate and make sure all the planes are landing and stuff. A lot of those people are not working because there's just not enough money, obviously. And as the government shutdown continues, more agencies, departments will run low on money and they'll also have to shut down. And it just gets to a point where it can lead to the markets having a temporary downwards move. But I don't think that really changes much. It's just a scenario to account for that price might go lower before it goes higher. And again, it is sort of separate from Bitcoin. It's Bitcoin is a separate asset, but it might just be temporarily correlated if everything drops. So yeah, not really a big deal. But I think when the shutdown ends, that'll obviously be positive for stocks, and that'll help crypto as well. Now, one of the big ones is the Fed chair, Jerome Powell. His term ends in May 2026, and the new candidate likely gets voted in end of year. So the market hasn't really priced in my opinion, this scenario, this whole sort of, thing that's playing out. I think Bezant is a likely candidate, but there's also a couple others that Trump has said that he would like voted in. I think Trump really, really wants a Fed chair that is on his team. So a Fed chair that is going to be making decisions that benefit the administration, that are in line with the administration. Obviously, the whole idea of the Fed is it's a separate entity, but I think that is going to be less relevant. It's not going to be as independent as it was in the past, depending on whoever gets voted in. Obviously, there's many people who decide that. But let's say Trump gets his way, he gets a Fed chair that is sort of on his team. I would expect the Fed to be acting less independently than it usually does. And because Trump obviously has a growth approach to the economy for his time that he's obviously in charge, he will be expecting growth-oriented policy decisions from the Fed chair, which would mean more spending, money printing, lower interest rates, etc., etc. And that would obviously be good for the economy, and people are going to be pricing that in going forward. I think we're beginning the pricing in of that sort of this whole catalyst, okay? Now, we also have the OG whales selling into TradFi institutions as a likely explanation for the recent price action. So when Bitcoin hits 100K, that's a very significant psychological level where people who bought Bitcoin at $200, $100, $1,000 look at that price and they go, and they also not just look at the price, they also look at the fact that the thesis has played out. Bitcoin is integrated everywhere now. TradFi is bidding it. We're getting the permanent ETF bid. Like, they're going to start realizing some gains. And that's a big reason why I think we've seen price go sideways and not really do anything for Bitcoin. Like, obviously it's gone up a little bit the past year, but not like much. And I think a lot of the explanation for that is the OG whales have just begun selling at the 100K region. And that's why we keep going up and we look like we're going to go to new all-time highs, and we just don't, because there's just a lot of supply that we have to digest. I think TradFi and the adoption of Bitcoin by TradFi is really helping the price not fall a lot. So this OG whale selling, I think if this was the prior bull market, would have led to Bitcoin dropping significantly, maybe 40-50%. I think with everything that's happened at the moment, like, Bitcoin could have been a lot lower. So there's this like really strong force of the selling from the whales who bought really cheap. There's also the really strong buying that's more gradual from TradFi. And so you've got Bitcoin basically in this equilibrium where it's like gets sold when it gets a bit high and then it gets bought when it gets a bit low. And so I think this period of sideways chop is going to eventually end, maybe in 6 months or something, 3 months, whatever it is. And then once we break above and we don't have that whale selling from the OGs as strong anymore, I think we'll see a more significant move past the all-time highs. So, you've got, like, obviously price has gone up, but in the past year, realistically, it hasn't gone up that much. Like, it's at the same price as it was this time last year. So I think once we break this all-time high, we could do some really good things. And yeah, just to give a summary, with the current picture of the next 3 to 9 months, things look really positive, and I think the bottom's basically in, and we trend the new all-time highs into next year. That's like my overall view. Now, is the bull market over? Why do I think we're going to new all-time highs? Well, with the OG coin distribution, the continuous passive bid from TradFi, the new Fed chair marking a doubling down on growth-focused policy, so the end of QT, interest rates going lower, I think it's unreasonable to expect a normal Bitcoin top in the month of November. You have to compare this month of November to the month of November in 2021. In 2021, they were basically aggressively starting quantitative tightening, and they were beginning a interest rate hiking regime. And you just have a completely different backdrop right now. It's just not even comparable. I think the backdrop that we had in 2021 is more likely to happen into 2026 or 2027, or maybe it might not even happen until 2028 when there is, another election and it's looking more like the left's going to win. So, we've also seen the bulk of the OG selling. Think about when Bitcoin first hit 100K, that's like where the OG selling really began. Think about how long ago it was that whale sold, I think it was like 60,000 Bitcoin, and he sold it through Galaxy Digital. And I remember it was like talked about, all over Twitter. That was quite a while ago. And you think about how long it's been since then and what price has done since then, it's actually actually done really well considering how much supply has had to be absorbed, right? We've absorbed all this, billions of dollars in supply that's now on the market, and the price is down like 20%. It's at the 0.5 fibs. It's done really well. Price has done really well considering what's happened here. You have to think about what is it that causes bull markets to end? Well, it's when people who bought early sell, and they increase the total float of supply on exchanges to such an extent that even with demand and a lot of it, it's not enough to push through all that supply, all that float, right? You think about what is the float? The float is the available amount of coins in circulation in exchanges that can be bought and sold. The float at the bottom is quite low because all the coins have been accumulated and taken off the exchange. It's in cold storage. People are holding it for the long term, right? When it's a low float, price can go up quite easily. At the top of a bull market, it's high float. Everyone's moving their coins back to the exchanges. They're looking to exit, and the high float makes it harder for price to go up. You need a lot more buying for the price to do the same move. And all that selling is not just selling, it's an increase in the float, right? So, that's just to help you understand the dynamics that happen here. And yeah, with visible strong bids and a strong macro backdrop into 2026, I think we see a cycle top in 2026, maybe later, but looking likely 2026, okay? And you also have to think about sort of the changing landscape with politics. We had Mamdani, how do you say his name? I don't know. Don't care. Don't like the guy. But anyway, he got elected into as the New York City mayor, I guess is what you call it. And I view this as the canary in the coal mine for a return of the left and the socialist agenda. You have to think about how the world's changing as a result of AI and robotics. The middle class is getting removed, getting hollowed out, because there's less and less of those jobs where someone can just become a lawyer and work for 40 years or become an accountant and work for 40 years. All their jobs are being slowly replaced by AI and robots. And this middle class that has existed for a long time is going to disappear, and you're going to end up having a lot of rich people and then a lot of poor people. And in the best case scenario, we'll have a universal high income, and so there won't be rich and poor, it'll be rich and like well off. But in a worst case scenario, and also in the scenario that's going to happen along the way, you're going to have a lot of people who lose their job and they aren't going to make enough from UBI, from government handouts, food stamps, to live the same life that they were living, right? For as much as the rich are going to get richer and the poor are going to get eventually, hopefully, universal high income, before that they're going to have to live off food stamps and UBI. Like, it's going to take a while for AI and robotics to bring about the level of abundance to give people who were the middle class the same level of lifestyle without the job, if that makes sense. So we have a lot of volatility and social unrest and chaos that's going to happen in this transition period, right? In any period of growth, there's a bit of instability. It's like in a relationship when you try to do new things, you move to a new country, and your partner is used to you within a certain paradigm, and you're now growing. There's growing pains, right? They have to accept new things. And it's the same thing to a much more significant extent with the way the world's going. Everyone's going to have to accept that most people won't have a job in 20, 30 years, and most people will live off of government income, money from the government. Or most people will, maybe there'll be some sort of shared ownership system over corporations where everyone basically owns the things that they pay for, essentially, in a more socialist manner. And that's the funny thing, like, socialism is the actual ultimate end game of capitalism, where all the people who wanted this world where we all own things sort of in a more equal fashion, you're going to get that through capitalism in a best case scenario, in a way that's much better than if you were to just go straight to the socialist path. So it's just interesting how all of this is playing out. And the way this relates to your investment portfolio is that into 2028, I think it's highly likely that the left wins. And the candidate that wins is going to be one that focuses on this topic of AI, robotics, taxation, employment, and UBI. Like, whoever can best hook into that, because that's basically the main pain point of the next 5-10 years, that is going to be the person who wins. That's the dominant narrative, the dominant story, the dominant thing to focus on for these politicians. And that's why Mamdani is winning. That's his main talking point. Socialism, like trying to fix, the rich, the billionaires, increasing tax. The reason the rich have all this money and the reason the left sort of hate the rich is not because they have the money. It's because the rich are basically taking the money from the middle class, because the middle class are losing their jobs to the robots and the AI that's replacing them. And when you think about it, right, one of the biggest expenses of businesses is employment. It's human labor. Human labor represents 40 to 70% on average, or like corporations of their spend. It's like the main business expense that they have. Imagine if most jobs are replaced and you don't need humans anymore, that will have a massive impact on the money that businesses are spending. They might reduce total business expenditure by 50%. And that'll obviously mean that the cost of everything will go down, which will be deflationary. But what it also means is that most people won't have jobs. And it means that these corporations are going to make more and more and more and more money. And it ends up, when you don't have money circulating into households, where are people going to get money from to pay for things? Because if all the money is going to the corporations, and in return you're getting goods and services, where are you going to get this money from to pay for things if you don't have a job? All the money is in the hands of these corporations, and the only way to get it is to tax them more. Tax corporations more so that you can give the money back to the people. And that's the only way that this is all going to work out, in my opinion. So that's the future in terms of like policy and the economy. And I think that the left is just looking, the left's going to win. Like, the right is just not going to care about these policies enough. I think the left has the best approach, the best angle to convince people that they have a solution to these problems, this social unrest that's going to come on this topic. I think they just have the best angle. And that's bearish Bitcoin, because the left is pro-regulation, pro-taxation, and these things hurt investors, they hurt businesses, they hurt adoption of crypto. You know, I don't know which side crypto will be on, if it will be hated or loved by the left, because they previously hated it, but at least people will be pricing in that, oh, they'll be pricing in, well, the left used to hate crypto, and now they're back in charge again. They're probably going to hate crypto again. They're going to, you know, all this like positive developments we had are going to like slow down. I view that as like just sort of a headwind that crypto will have starting in 2027 as people price in the left winning, and then, you know, throughout the time that the left is in charge from 2028 onwards. So anyway, that's all like, this is my early thoughts on the way the world's going, and it's all just to say that I think from now into at least the first half of 2026, I think things will be really good. After that, I'm not sure, and we're going to have to see. Okay, so that's everything. Thank you guys for watching the video. See you in the next one.